namzależy.pl. Merytoryczne źródło informacji.
Partnerzy kanału. Sklep Nam Zależy. Najlepsze biznesowe i gospodarcze książki dla dzieci. Nadrabiamy to, o czym milczą w szkołach. Siepomaga.pl. Największa moc pomagania.
Zasługujesz, by wiedzieć wszystko o działce, którą posiadasz lub kupujesz. Zdiagnozuj działkę z ongeo.pl.
Hello, my name is Jan Kubań. I am from YouTube channel Nam Zależy from Poland, which means literally we do care. And I have a pleasure and honor to host Doug Casey from the United States. Hello.
It's nice to talk to you, Jan. Although right now I'm not in the US, I'm in Uruguay in South America.
Yes, so I personally know, because I have this pleasure to meet you a couple years ago in Poland. I know that you lived in a multitude of countries and you lived for a given period of time that you can learn about this country. So nowadays you are in Uruguay, but it was a time you lived in Argentina, for example.
Well, I'm quite close to Argentina, and it's just across the Plate River from where I am. But I've been to about 155 or 160 countries. I've lived in 10 or 12, and so I've seen most of the world. Not all of it, but most of it.
You are quite well known in Poland, but I would like that you introduce yourself because probably a lot of people the viewers of our channel, may not know you. So can you briefly introduce what was your history, who are you, what is your main activity?
Okay. Well, I think I'm best known as being an author, but I make my living as a speculator in the markets. My first book was a book called The International Man, which had a subtitle, How to Make the Most of Your Personal Freedom and Financial Opportunity Around the World. And it sold quite well. And actually, it became the largest selling book in the history of Rhodesia, which is a record that will never be broken, because, of course, Rhodesia doesn't exist anymore. And I spent a lot of time in Rhodesia during the war there. My second book was called Crisis Investing, and it was a gigantic bestseller in the United States and translated into Spanish and French, I think. And it basically talked about why we were headed for a massive depression. I call it the Greater Depression. And we can talk about why I said that if you want to. And since then, I've, among other things, written 3 novels out of a projected series of 7 novels, which trace our hero through 7 highly politically incorrect occupations. First, he's a speculator, which takes place in Africa in the midst of a bush war with boy soldiers and this type of thing. Then he becomes a drug lord. I show a speculator can be a good thing. Drug lord is the second book. I show a drug lord can be a good guy. Third is assassin, where he gets very pissed off at the state and becomes an assassin. And I show that being an assassin is not necessarily a bad thing. The next book is terrorist, where our hero becomes a terrorist. But are all terrorists bad? Well, we'll discuss that. And the book after that, he goes back to Africa, where he becomes a warlord, where he shows that a warlord can be a good guy. And the last 2 books are much more radical than that. So, yeah, that's what I do for amusement.
Okay, thank you very much. And your books are translated. Some of your books are already translated into Polish, and I think that they were published by Freedom Publishing. Yes, Mr. Zuber.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if our viewers want to buy your books, they can address to the Freedom Publishing, and you can find variety of Doug Casey books. Now, before I will ask you about Argentina, I would like to ask you, what is speculation? Is speculating helping you to predict the future, especially, political events? How do you perceive this speculation in the relation to the development of the events in the world?
Well, first of all, let me explain the difference between investing and speculation. Investing is putting money someplace to make real wealth grow. Investing is planting a seed in order to get thousands of seeds back. Unfortunately, in today's world, investing is becoming harder and harder because the state, government, makes this harder and harder. So that's why I suggest that people learn about speculation. And speculation is the process of capitalizing on distortions that the government makes in society, in the markets. Perfect example of that would have been years ago when George Soros, an awful person, but a very good speculator, shorted the British pound because it was inevitable that it was going to collapse because of British government policies at the time. And of course, a lot of people confuse speculation with gambling. Gambling is a very different thing. It's a zero-sum game based on chance, and that's not what speculation is about. Anyway, I came to Argentina. Well, I first came to Argentina to play polo because I played polo for years, many years. But about 20 years ago, I and some friends invested a lot of money in Argentina, speculated a lot of money in Argentina. We bought, oh goodness, we bought 100,000 hectares of land and buildings. We bought a bunch of things. And I'm afraid we were too early because Argentina had not hit bottom yet. But I still think we're going to break even on that. Not all speculations work out because we don't have a perfect view of the future. But I think this will work out because in Argentina, they finally got tired of being criminally stupid and elected Javier Milei several months ago, who's now the president of Argentina. And it's interesting because Milei is the world's only anarcho-capitalist who runs the country. And he doesn't just talk the talk, he's walking the walk. Milei does not believe philosophically that government has a right to exist. He wants to destroy the state. And that's what he's doing. He's firing government employees. He's abolishing government agencies. His next step will be radically reduce taxes, radically reduce regulations, radically reduce import duties. And if he succeeds, and he will succeed unless the bad guys kill him, Argentina will go from, well, Argentina will become one of the most, or perhaps the most prosperous country in the world. So I stay close to Argentina because finally I'm going to be right. This is a speculation that's taken, let's see, 2007 it's taken 17 years to pan out.
So you believe in Milei and you believe in his success?
Well, he's absolutely correct from a philosophical and an economic and a political point of view. Yes. Ideally, he wants to get rid of the Argentine government because his belief, like my belief, as an anarcho-capitalist, is that government is a dead hand on society. It actually serves no useful purpose. Everything that society needs would be provided by society itself, by entrepreneurs who do things for a profit. So, yes.
So, is it a right moment to invest in Argentina?
Yes, it is. I believe, because Argentina is very, very cheap right now. I'm in Uruguay right now, which is the most expensive country in Latin America. The price of a meal in a restaurant here in Uruguay is about what it is in New York City, pretty expensive. But if you go across the river to Argentina, everything costs 25% of what it does here, a discount, a huge discount. And that's true of property prices and everything. So that if I was a European, I would want to, first of all, I want to get out of Europe for a number of reasons. Europe is in big trouble, and it's going to get much worse in Europe. But where would I go? I would go to Argentina or Uruguay, and you'd find that your standard of living would go way up. Your cost of living would go way down. The amount of personal freedom you have would go way up. Anything can happen in South America. It's a volatile place. But Argentina is the most westward looking, the most outward looking of all the countries in Latin America. It's the most European, ethnically and other ways. So that it's a good choice. Now, will Milei succeed in practically abolishing the government? Yes, I think he will, unless they kill him, which is something that can happen because the Peronists in Argentina, the collectivists, the statists, socialists, communists, there are a lot of them, and they hate what he's trying to do. But he was elected with almost 60% of the vote, and the vote were basically young people who were sick of having of being taken advantage of, being taxed to death, having regulations that make it impossible for them to do anything. So yeah, I think he'll succeed.
Okay, thank you. So if you advise Europeans to come to Argentina and invest, in which sectors will you advise to invest?
Well, 100 years ago, before socialism captured Argentina, it was the third or fourth most prosperous country in the world. And today, as we look at Argentina, it's the seventh largest country in the world. So it has a huge landmass, going from the glaciers in the south to the rainforest in the north, mountains, plains, but it only has 45 million people in the seventh largest country in the world. So there's lots of room, lots of opportunity. Argentines are well educated. What should you invest in here? Well, we bought a lot of real estate. We bought a lot of property. You can invest in the Argentine stock market too. It will boom as the reforms Milei is making catch on. One thing he's very serious about is making sure that Argentina has a stable currency. Because since the days of Juan Perón after World War II, Argentina has had the worst monetary policies in the world. They've destroyed four different currencies. New currency goes to zero. New currency goes to zero. And what that means is the average Argentine can't save money, because if you save in your national currency and it goes to zero, you're wiped out every few years. So eventually, Milei wants to have gold as the national currency in Argentina.
Okay, so
every country should use gold, or you can use Bitcoin for that matter. I think Bitcoin may turn into the new gold.
You think?
You can use both at the same time, no problem.
Are you a strong advocate of Bitcoin?
Yes, I am. At first, look, there are 5 characteristics of a sound currency, and this is something that Aristotle defined in the 4th century BC. So this is not a new breakthrough, a currency has to be durable. That's why you can't use wheat as a currency. It has to be divisible. That's why you can't use artwork as a currency. You can't make change for the Mona Lisa. It has to be convenient. That's why you don't use lead for a currency. It takes too much. It has to be consistent. That's why you don't use diamonds for a currency. And the fifth reason is that it has to have use value. And I was a late adopter to Bitcoin. I only got into it in 2017, and it was created in 2012. So I was late getting into it, but not too late, because what is the use value of Bitcoin? It's that it's a perfect transfer device. It allows you to move wealth across borders privately, cheaply, and that's one of the disadvantages with gold. You can't move it across borders easily, but Bitcoin, it can be. Also, the supply of Bitcoin is strictly limited to 21 million Bitcoin. It's a mathematical thing. And this is very important. It means that as more people understand the value of Bitcoin, there won't be more of it, but there will be more adopters. So yes, I think Bitcoin can go much higher in price. What is it? 60,000 now, let's say, easily. It can go to 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 in the relatively near future. And gold is going up too. Gold is now about 2,000. And I'm afraid it's going higher also, because all of these governments everywhere are destroying their currencies.
But do you think that gold is a good resource to invest?
You can't invest in gold because and remember, investing is something where you put capital to create more capital. And gold doesn't do that.
Sorry. Sorry for this mistake.
Now, gold is just money, and you ought to own it because gold, along with Bitcoin, is the only financial asset that is not simultaneously somebody else's liability. So the nice thing about gold is you don't have to trust anybody when you own it. There's no counterparty risk. And I'm afraid that for the rest of this decade, we're going to be living in a world of chaos. We're looking at the Greater Depression, economic chaos. We're looking at wars, political chaos. The demographics of the world are very, very seriously bad in many ways. So the idea for the next 10 years is to just preserve the wealth you have.
In gold and real estates.
Yeah, and buy Bitcoin too.
By Bitcoin too. Because in Poland, everyone invests in real estate, and Poles think it is the safest and the best thing to do. What do you think about? So if you can make, the hierarchy between, first of all, invest in real estates or gold or Bitcoin, or three of them.
Well, look, real estate has been very, very good to me over the years. So the problem with real estate, look, to answer that question, the big problem we have is political risk today. Financial risk, it's huge today. Economic risk, huge today. But the biggest risk is political risk. It's what will these criminals, really stupid, many times evil people in government do? And the problem with real estate is they can steal it from you very easily. It's there, it's obvious. Look what happened after World War II with Poland. The government stole everybody's property. So that's the problem with real estate. I only like the idea of owning real estate in a stable country that's going to get better and more prosperous. Does Poland qualify? I don't know. This war in the Ukraine, I think it could get much more serious than it is. The Americans, the American government is the biggest danger in the world today to the world. It's crazy. The United States used to be a wonderful, unique place, the land of the free. It really was, it's true. But no longer is, because we have these neocons in control of the government. And I'm afraid they're looking for World War III with Russia. I really do. So that's a problem for Poland, since it's right on the front line.
Yeah, and so maybe it's not an economical question, but what do you think about this race between Biden and Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, it's not a race with Biden, because he's not going to run. They're not going to let him do it, because he's demented, he's feeble, he's senile. So he's gone. Now, the question is who the Democrats are going to replace him with. And most people that follow these things believe, and it's hard to believe, but they'll run Michelle Obama, who many people call Big Mike. So that'll be the Democratic candidate, probably. And of course, Trump will be the Republican candidate, assuming he's not assassinated. Now, the important thing about Trump is that he's a lightning rod. People either love him or hate him. And this is the problem in the United States. You've got people from the red states, which are the center of the country, basically, and the small towns, and the people from the blue states, which are the coasts and the big cities. And they hate each other. They really do hate each other. They can't talk to each other. And Trump represents the red people. And this is like a civil war in the making. It's really serious. So Trump will run against the Democrat. And who will win? Well, I think in terms of popular votes, Trump will win. But the Democrats are much better at cheating than the Republicans are. And so perhaps using electronic voting machines, using mail-in votes, using the millions and millions of migrants that have recently come to the US, they'll get them to vote, which they have no right to do. Maybe the Democrats will win. And if that happens, it's going to get very unpleasant in the US.
So both options are bad, or if you will vote for Trump?
Well, first of all, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I don't believe in voting. I don't believe in political democracy. But the answer to the question is, what Trump represents is traditional values. He's a traditionalist. He'd like magic to happen and for the US to go back to the way it was in the 1950s. Leave it to Beaver and Father Knows Best. And he doesn't understand economics, although he's a businessman, so he doesn't like taxes or regulations, except the kind that he likes. So, but the Democrats are wrong in every possible way. They want to radically change the US. They want to make the US like Argentina was before Milei was elected. That's all their policies are similar to those of the Peronists in Argentina. In fact, worse. The Democrats in the US are Jacobins. They're like the people that took over France after the revolution in 1789. They're very, very dangerous. They're criminal personalities, actually. So to answer the question, yes, I hope Trump wins, but it's not like he's going to be magic.
Okay, so let's finish with the sad information, and let's switch to maybe things which will be more interesting and maybe joyful. I would like to talk about your books, which were published in Poland. Can you say a few words about your first book, Investing in Difficult Times? What is this book about?
Well, what I try to do is explain basic economics, because and nobody wants to hear about economics. It's boring, it's complex. No, not really. Economics is really just understanding the way the world works and how progress is made. And so this is what I try to explain. It is not Keynesian. Keynesianism is very destructive. It's anti-Marxist. So try to explain the way things are, the way things should be. And the problem is that the state, government, when it's involved in the society, creates distortions, creates misallocations of capital. And these things eventually result in an economic depression, a period of time when most people's standard of living goes down. And I'm of the opinion that even though we've had tremendous technical progress in science and engineering that has been hugely helpful to raising the standard. In fact, that's the only thing that raises the standard of living. You produce more than you consume and save the difference, and innovate in technology. And that's why the standard of living goes up. But these distortions the governments have created are going to result in an economic collapse, and the standard of living will go down. And it has been going down for the average American for the last 50 years, believe it or not. It doesn't look like it because he's taken on huge amounts of debt, and consumer debt is a very bad thing. It's like if I borrow $1 million right now, I can live very high off the hog. I can have a very high standard of living for the next year or the next 10 years with that borrowed money. But when I have to pay the money back and pay it back with interest, my standard of living will go much lower than it used to be. And that's what America has been doing for the last 50 years. And finally, as we say, the chickens are going to come home to roost. And it can be, I think we're going to have a serious financial collapse, which is to say stocks and bond prices and so forth will go down. An economic collapse, which means high unemployment and businesses fail. That's what a depression is all about. So hold on to your hat.
Okay, so this book advises how to behave in such difficult times.
That's exactly right. Exactly. It's why a depression happens and what you should do so that you are not hurt by it, or maybe can profit from it, because most of the real wealth in the world will still be here if the economy collapses. I mean, the technologies and the factories and the farms and the mines, they'll all still be here. They'll just change ownership.
So your second book, translated into Polish, it's A Speculator. And could you briefly introduce as well this book to our audience, and also answer to such a question: what role in the development of society play speculators? Because in the communist period of time in Poland and Soviet Union, we didn't have speculators. They were condemned, it was banned. And in the United States, we have, a lot of speculators. So they should play rather positive role in the development of societies.
Well, they should. But if we lived in a free market society, which we don't, speculators would be unemployed because governments would not be there to create these distortions in the market. But the more powerful governments become, the more opportunities there are for speculators. Now, my book, Speculator, is written in the form of a novel that takes our hero when he's 18 And it talks about how he becomes a speculator. And in the novel, you learn the theory of speculation. And in the novel, our hero gets involved in small mining stocks, and that's my specialty. Mining, incidentally, is about the most stupid thing in the world to try to invest in for all kinds of reasons. But as a speculation, it can be very good because the mining stocks are very volatile. So in Speculator, our hero, Charles Knight, gets lucky on a Canadian mining stock with a property in Africa, and he decides, I think I'm going to go to Africa and take a look at this mine and the company. He finds out it's a fraud. There's always been a lot of fraud in mining. And, he gets involved in a bush war. And anyway, one way or another, he starts out with $10,000 and turns it into $100 million in Africa. And then the U.S. government takes it all away from him. That's what the novel is about. So anyway, it's a very good read. I recommend it.
Okay, so thank you very much for this very interesting talk. But because I committed an error, probably I didn't pick up your message. So I would like to ask you to repeat once again the difference between speculator, investor, and gambler.
Okay. An investor is somebody who allocates capital to make more capital. It's like planting a seed so that you get a garden from it. It's very hard, unfortunately, today to be an investor because the government is always there, cutting down the garden, putting Agent Orange on the garden. When your garden grows up, stealing the fruits. So in today's world, it's good to be an investor, but very hard in today's world to be an investor. So what you should look to do is be a speculator. Now, a speculator doesn't try to grow new wealth. He tries to take advantage of distortions that the government creates in the market to buy low and sell high. But people often confuse a speculator with a gambler. And a gambler is a zero-sum game. We're counting on chance, on accident to win. And since most people confuse speculation with gambling, they lose when they speculate. The average guy should not speculate unless he's got a very good grip on technology and psychology and politics and many things. A gambler doesn't need any of that. So those are the three things.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. You are a very good professor, and I would like that you repeat, because I would like that this message will be left in our viewers' brains. So the really last question, you already said that it's you advise to come to Argentina or Uruguay, but do you have another countries which are worth to invest or live in?
Well, I'll say it again, that Europe is a bad place to be for the next decade. All these governments in Europe are very powerful and socialist-oriented. And I'm afraid that, once again, I'll say this, that what's going on with the Ukraine and Russia, I think it might get out of control. So that's one thing. The other thing is that throughout mostly Western Europe, there are a huge number of migrants coming into the continent, and they don't share European values or religion or languages or anything. And it's going to be a big problem because these stupid governments are putting them all on welfare and encouraging more of them to come. So that's going to wind up with a a sociological and a demographic time bomb. So that's why I suggest Argentina and Uruguay, and for that matter, Brazil, as places that and maybe again Chile, where I think if you're a European, you should look at coming there. I lived in New Zealand for years, and I really like New Zealand. It's a beautiful country. It only has 4 million people. You know, it's worth looking at. It's got problems. We can talk about New Zealand at length. We can talk about Australia, another possibility, at length. It's got problems, but it's a possibility. Africa is great if you're young and entrepreneurial. I think you can make a fortune in Africa. Africa is a great place for a speculator because as a European, when you go to Africa, you're unusual. You're going to have much different experiences, much more knowledge, more capital. So I don't like to be on a level playing field. I like to be on an unlevel playing field and when you go to Africa, you can bring something to the party and the Africans will want to meet you. So it's got problems, huge problems. But if you're a young guy, Africa's the place. As a place to live and just retire and enjoy yourself, my favorite country in the world is Thailand. I'm a big fan of Thailand. I also like Japan. Incidentally, those are the only 2 countries in Asia that were not colonized by Europeans. Strange. But yeah, think of those things.
Okay, Doug, thank you so much for this very interesting talk and that you find the time and devoted it to our channel. I wish you good luck and maybe next talks with us. Thank you very much.
Look forward to it, Jan. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.